What's going on, family? This is Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. We're going to take a look at two very exciting fighters, Gene Tunney, Fighting Marine, and Harry Greb, the Pittsburgh Windmill. Now, these two men were engaged in 5 very exciting fights. A few were controversial, but one was unanimous. That unanimous fight took place in 1922. It was for the America's Light Heavyweight Championship. And I want to go through the careers of both Gene Tunney and Harry Greb, leading up to those exciting fights, right here with you on a Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. Now, James Tunney, his name was James Joseph Tunney. He was known as the Fighting Marine. He was born in Greenwich Village, New York's Lower East Side, May 25th, 1898. He died November 7th, 1978 in Greenwich, Connecticut. He was 80 years of age at the time of his death. Now, he stood 6 foot and a half inches, weighed 155 to 192 and a quarter pounds. Had a fighting career record of 85 total bouts, 65 wins, 48 knockouts, and he only lost to one man, and that was Harry Greb. Now, Gene Tunney was managed by Billy Jacobs, 1915 to 1918. Sammy Kelly, 1919 and 1920. Frank Doc Bagley, 1920, 1922. And he would get rid of Doc Bagley after he lost to Harry Greb. And he would pick up Billy Gibson from 1923 to the end of his career in 1928. Now, Gene Tunney was well advised by a very shrewd, very experienced. Matter of fact, I have him ranked number 3 as my greatest trainer of all times. Jimmy DeFrost smoked a cigar. He was in there with the greats of greats. He wanted Kid Norfolk, but he wasn't able to get Kid Norfolk. But he was involved with Jack Dempsey and many, many others. Jimmy DeFrost, an outstanding trainer. And Gene Tunney was a very intellectual and scientific thinker. He was a brilliant problem solver. And he read books and studied Shakespeare. He was well acquainted with men such as George Bernard Shaw and the Wright brothers. And he was a part of Benny Leonard's The Ghetto Withers stablemate. Benny Leonard was a lightweight champion of the world. Came very close to becoming a welterweight champion when he knocked down Johnny Dundee. But unfortunately, he hit him while he was down and was disqualified. I have Benny Leonard alongside with Joe Gans, greatest lightweight of all times. I have Roberto Duran, just for the record, ranked number 3. But Gene Tunney was a scientific thinker who played chess, studied war books, and he studied different styles and wanted to earn as much money as a fighter as possible, and he wanted to get out. Thought of his future. He was a very, very shrewd and strategic thinker in and out of the ring. A great trainer of mine who trained me in Lenny Shaw's boxing gym was located in Totowa, New Jersey. His name was Art Cavalier. Had a brother by the name of Paul Cavalier. I respected those men till this day. R.I.P. to them. Because they would sit many hours down with me and a few others, and they would talk to us about the old fighters. Paul Cavalier had sparred many rounds and trained in the same gyms as Gene Tunney. He told me that Gene Tunney was like a machine. His IQ was as high as you could possibly expect from a fighter. Beautiful jab, outstanding foot movement. Wasn't the greatest counterpuncher, but he would dictate the pace of the fight. And he reminded him of Jim Corbett. And the Black Prince, Peter Jackson. Now, Paul Cavalier became a referee. And he would get an award in New Jersey. Well-spoken, very intelligent. I learned a great deal from Paul Cavalier. R.I.P. to Paul Cavalier and his brother Art Cavalier. Two fine gentlemen. Now, Gene Tunney has sparred many rounds with Paul Cavalier. And as I stated to you, he was told to me by Paul Cavalier that Gene Tunney was a master boxer. He became light heavyweight champion in the AEF as a Marine, along with heavyweight AEF Bob Martin, and AEF lightweight champion Leo Johnson. Gene Tunney would turn professional in 1915, July 2nd, against Bobby Dawson, New York, 8-round technical knockout. Now, he would be undefeated in 5 bouts that year. 1916, he'd be undefeated in 5 bouts. 1917, undefeated in 3 bouts. 1918, he'd be undefeated in 6 bouts. In that same year, 1918, he would enlist in the Marines. You see, he had his future well thought out for him. 1919, he won the AEBF Light Heavyweight Championship in France. He defeated, knocked out Sullivan and Ted Jamison in the final rounds after defeating 20 opponents in an elimination series. This won way out through France. Gene became interested in the heavyweight division when he defeated his teammate and close friend, Bob Martin, in a special 4-round bout. He realized that he can actually become heavyweight champion of the world. Tunney eliminated men such as Indian Lewis, Dare Davis, Knockout Sullivan, and Ted Jamison, just to name a few. January 13th, 1922, Tunney defeats champion Battling Levinsky to win a New York version of the America's Light Heavyweight Championship belt. 12 fights. He would lose the American Light Heavyweight Championship belt May 23rd, 1922 against Harry Greb, New York's Madison Square Garden. He would lose a 15-round decision. And Tunney was cut up badly, nose bleeding, cut over his eyes, bloody mouth, and he was exhausted. August 24th, he would face Tom Loughran, Philadelphia, no decision in 10 rounds. July 24th, 1924, 15-round knockout over George Carpentier. Now, George Carpentier was the world light heavyweight champion. He would pick up that title when he defeated Battling Levinsky. And what was interesting about that was Battling Levinsky had lost to Gene Tunney. So they made it the America's Light Heavyweight Championship belt. Gene Tunney was from America. George Carpentier would also defeat Battling Levinsky, and that would be for the World Light Heavyweight Championship belt. September 17th, no decision in 10 rounds, Harry Greb, Cleveland, Ohio. December 8th, Jeff Smith, New Orleans, would defeat him in 9 rounds and have a no decision with him in 15 rounds. Now, Jeff Smith was from New York. He would train in Harlem at the famous Grubbs Gym. Jeff Smith was an outstanding middleweight. I learned a lot about Jeff Smith, the old-time trainers and historians that I dealt with many years ago. March 27, 1925, Harry Greb, St. Paul's, Minnesota. 10 rounds, no decision. Now, in some record books, you're going to get losses. And I have many articles that states no decisions between Harry Greb and Gene Tunney. 1925, June 5th, Tommy Gibbons, New York, 12-round knockout. Tommy Gibbons was from St. Paul's. November 18th, Cleveland Baker Boy. His name was Johnny Risco. And that would be some fight. Gene Tunney would face Harry Greb 5 times. That was his toughest opponent to beat. Harry Greb's name was Edward Henry Greb. They called him the Pittsburgh Windmill. He was an Irish German, born June 6, 1894, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Died October 22nd, 1926, Atlantic City, New Jersey. He stood 5 foot 8 inches and weighed 147 to 173 pounds. He was managed by George Eagle. He fought over 300 bouts, lost 8 matches, and he was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1955. He was a former light heavyweight, America's champion. 1922, May 23rd, when he defeated Gene Tunney. One title defense over Tommy Loughran, January 30th, 1923, New York, America's light heavyweight championship belt. February 23rd, he would face Gene Tunney, New York's Madison Square Garden, America's light heavyweight championship belt. And he would lose. Very controversially. August 31st, 1923, won the middleweight championship title from Harlem, New York's Johnny Wilson, New York's Madison Square Garden. And Harry Greb would lose that title, 1926, to the Georgia Deacon, Tiger Flowers. Now, Greb fought Perry Kid Graves with a broken arm. He broke it in 2 pieces, December 16th, 1915. Bout was stopped in the 2nd round. He had 6 wins in 1913 as an amateur, 9 wins in 1913 as a professional, 1 no decision and 1 loss. 17 wins, 1 no decision, 1914. 7 wins, 1 no decision, 1914. He had 21 bouts, 1 no decision, 1 loss, 1 exhibition, 1915. 15 no decisions and 2 knockouts, 4 wins, 1 loss, 4 exhibitions in 1918. See, Harry Greb had stayed busy through the duration of his career. Now, he lost to Per Graves, December 16th, 1915, with a broken arm. Private George Ring, lost in 4, December 12th, 1918. Gene Tunney, New York's Madison Square Garden, February 23rd, 1923. Tommy Loughran in Boston, October 11th, 1923, lost in 10 rounds. Gene Tunney, New York, December 10th, 1923. Kid Norfolk, Boston, April 19th, 1924, lost on a foul in 6 rounds. Theodore Tiger Flowers, February 26th, New York, Madison Square Garden, lost in 15 rounds. And he would lose to Theodore Tiger Flowers once again, August 19th, New York, Madison Square Garden. He would lose in 15 rounds. Now, those are the losses for Harry Greb. Now, the winning column would be Al McCoy, who was a former middleweight champion. Faye Kaiser, who he fought 7 times. Clay Turner. Leo Florian Hulk. Bill Brennan. Chuck Wiggins and Gene Tunney. Tommy Loughran. Johnny Wilson. Ted Moore. Jimmy Slattery. Mickey Walker. Allentown Joe Gans. Knockouts he would have would be Lloyd Kushner, Battling Murphy, Terry Nelson, Jesse Clark, Eddie Coleman and Julie Ritchie, Harry Baker, Frank Brennan, Herman Miller, Battling Copeland, Tommy Madden, and Ed Gunboat Smith. No decisions that would be on his record. It was Tommy Gibbons, Kid Norfolk, Tiger Flowers, Mike Gibbons, Al McCoy and Jeff Smith, Jack Dillon, the Giant Slayer, Battling Levinsky, George Chip, Mike O'Dowd, Mike Mateague, Jacob Soldier Barfield, Bob Moha, Eddie McCarthy, Tommy Loughran, Billy Misk, K.O. Brin, George One Punch Davis, George K.O. Brown, and Buck Holly, Ed K.O. Smith, Tommy Gibbons, Lou Rollins, Faye Kaiser, Jimmy Slattery, Maxie Rosenblum, Kid Norfolk. Now, Harry Greb and Gene Tunney was in a ring 5 times. And that's remarkable because Gene Tunney was a master boxer. And for Harry Greb to accomplish that means a great deal. Now, their first fight took place May 23rd, 1922. Greb weighed 162 pounds, and Tunney weighed 175 pounds. 115 rounds was located in New York's Madison Square Garden. Referee was Billy Kid McCartland. Judge was Tommy Shortnell and Elmer Hurley. Ring announcer was Joe Humphreys. Now, Greb was a 3-1 betting favorite. There was a crowd of 13,000 in the arena. Now, Greb won by a 15-round unanimous decision. And Tunney bled from his nose and his mouth and was cut over both eyes. They say he lost almost a quart of blood. And immediately, Harry Greb wanted to face George Carpentier, offered him $150,000. And George Carpentier refused, made excuses, stating he had other obligations. They would face one another a second time. This time, Greb weighed 166 pounds. Tunney weighed 174. Scheduled for 15 rounds. Took place February 23rd, 1923. New York's Madison Square Garden. This time, the referee was Patsy Haley. And it was for the America's Light Heavyweight Championship belt. Now, it grossed $47,396.45. You had 15,000 in attendance. And Harry Greb was promised $17,773.66. Gene Tunney made out with $5,924.55. Now, what was amazing about that fight, it was so controversial. And I have articles that I will show you where Harry Greb could have won at least 3 out of the 5 fights. But Harry Greb was a problem for most opponents. Gene Tunney and Jack Dempsey was talked about. And they didn't want Harry Greb to upset the apple cart. And I would never say that Harry Greb was robbed. But there was some controversies in some of those fights where Harry Greb could have been given a victory. And you had a lot of newspaper decisions. New York Times gave it to Tunney. The New York America gave it to Tunney. The Evening Journal gave it to Greb. Evening Mail gave it to Greb. And Philadelphia Ledger gave it to Harry Greb. Pittsburgh Gazette gave it to Harry Greb. So there was such controversy in that second fight. And they would have to have a third fight for sure. It was just a matter of where they were going to house that third meeting. So they came up with a date, December 10th, 1923. Harry Greb was 172 pounds, went up in weight. Gene Tunney weighed 175 pounds. And this was a sure shot that Harry Greb's hand would be raised. But unfortunately, it was not. They had a fourth meeting. Harry Greb went down in weight. He weighed 166 pounds. Gene Tunney weighed 175. It wound up becoming a draw. It was at the Olympic Arena, Brooklyn. Took place in Ohio. September 17th, 1924. And that fight was up in the air. But it went to Gene Tunney. In the fifth and final meeting, Greb was 168 pounds. Tunney was 181. And it took place March 27th, 1925. Referee was George Barton. And once again, Harry Greb, in my estimation, was shortchanged. Now, Harry Greb had faced Kid Norfolk. And these two men would bang it out. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, August 29th, 1921. It would be a no decision in 10 rounds. He would face him again. And this is where the controversy of Harry Greb's eye injury occurred. That Kid Norfolk mistakenly had poked Harry Greb in the eye with his thumb. And what's so funny about that is Kid Norfolk had the same injury happen to him a fight before that. And there's controversy that it didn't quite happen with Kid Norfolk. It happened with a fighter before Kid Norfolk. Whatever the case, Harry Greb wound up fighting 47 fights after that Kid Norfolk fight, with poor vision in one eye. He would meet Johnny Wilson. 15 rounds, New York's Madison Square Garden. And he would become the middleweight champion of the world. 1924, January 18th. Johnny Wilson would lose once again to Harry Greb, New York's Madison Square Garden. We're going to take a look at that. It was a 15-round decision. Harry Greb, I have ranked number 2. He's my greatest fighter of all times. Johnny Wilson was from Harlem, New York. He trained in Greb's gym. He was a southpaw. I have a friend named Teddy who knew him personally. Told me Johnny Wilson was a very good fighter. So it goes to show you how great of a fighter Harry Greb was. The opponents that he fought, the style in which he fought. He wasn't a master boxer by any stretch of imagination. He was very rugged. But you got to give Harry Greb a lot of credit because Harry Greb handled the man in his time with no problem. I want to take a look at the scrapbook of Harry Greb. I want to take a look at some of the fights he fought. It was such a controversial fight between Gene Tunney and Harry Greb. I want to take a few seconds to show you some of those fights, along with George Carpentier and Tommy Lockman. Let's take a look. Now, what I'm choosing to do is show you two different books. Gene Tunney, Scrapbook,